Jason Paniagua, what is up? Hector Gomez, the pride of Central Catholic High School. Tracy Bogert on Election Day, chairman of the Bexar County MAGA Republicans, coronavirus deniers, and Vladimir Putin bootlickers. Welcome in. Woo! Good to see you, Tracy. Hector, Amber. Yeah, John Morant. My God. Here we go.
This is the Chris Duel Show.
You know what I mean? For the evil overlords at Facebook.
Now, Chris Duel.
It is a new day. It is a new month. It is a Taco Tuesday. Everything is beautiful in the sports world, sort of, unless you're a Spurs fan, unless you're a Longhorns fan, unless you're a baseball fan, and unless you're an Art Briles fan. And if you're an Art Briles fan, I'm very, very worried about you. We need to have a talk. Welcome in. It is the Chris Duel Show with the well-rested Shannon, Salty, Sweeney. Yesterday, she was just running on empty. Thank you, Jackson Brown. Running on fumes after getting in after midnight from her Las Vegas whirlwind weekend. Jeremy Kolok is your Soundscape Stylist, the pride of Oklahoma State University. Shannon, Salty, Sweeney, how are you feeling this morning compared to 24 hours ago at this time?
Feeling so refreshed, Chris. Just a mere 3-hour nap. It's amazing what it does for one's body and state of mind. That's exactly what I did yesterday. Following the show, worth it. I think I'm finally back to myself following a stint to Vegas over the weekend.
Very cool. And a small price to pay. A little sleep deprivation for a day. You get a little sleep. You're back among the living. I just looked at the live video feed, Shannon, and this is breaking news. Mm-hmm. The greatest international Spurs fan, not just me saying that, Tony Parker says that as well. Taro Kotani from Tokyo, Japan says, I have passed my last COVID test. He had to take multiple in Japan to travel to the United States. He will fly to San Antonio tomorrow. So that's pretty cool. Taro Kotani, friend of the show, friend of Spurs fans, and friend of everybody he meets. So I'm sure we will have him on the show, maybe even in studio if his schedule allows. So that's kind of cool. Good for Taro.
How long is that flight? Because
that's a good question. Taro, answer that question of Shannon's.
Talk about sleep deprivation, like any sort of travel, even if I'm like in the car, like to me driving to San Antonio in the car for an hour and a half, like then I need time to like regroup. If flights that long, it's insane what it can do to your body.
Now you've traveled to Europe a number of times. I went to Israel a few years, well over 10 years ago now. But what I was told by international travelers, and that's when Ambien was still kind of a big thing. They said, if you're going to get on like a 12-hour flight, just don't try to gut it out. Get on the plane, down an Ambien, because you're going to have to switch to the other side of the world time change anyway. So knock yourself out, sleep as much as you can, and try to be refreshed when you step off on the other side of the world. How do you handle a long 12, 13, 15-hour flight like that?
I agree. You sleep going over, and you stay awake coming back. And we've been lucky to, like, when we've gone, I think our flights out of Austin have left at like 6:30-ish. So it's close enough to nighttime that, like, after they feed you dinner on these long plane rides, and usually there's alcohol provided, so no Ambien for me, just like a little wine or something to just relax and kick back. And then I love that they have the movies available to watch on their TV screens. Usually my sister will stay up and watch all of them because they're there to be viewed, but you got to sleep on the way over. Watch the movies on the way back.
There you go. So, Taro, if you're listening, and Taro, I mean, this will be his 17th trip. This is why he's the greatest international Spurs fan. He will have made 17 trips from his native Tokyo, Japan, to San Antonio to see the Spurs. Speaking of the Spurs last night, Shannon, did not end well. It was another one of those games where throughout much of the game, the Spurs were in it, but Ja Morant just went off, as he never has yet in his career, a career high and a franchise high 52 points for Ja Morant last night as the Memphis Grizzlies beat the Spurs 118-105. Spurs finished the rodeo road trip at 4-4. But Shannon, I must point out, and I mentioned this again on Spurs React, if you would have said to me before the rodeo road trip, will you take 4-4? Because the Spurs were 9-16 on the road, 7 games under 500 before the rodeo road trip. So if you believed that they were going to split and go 4-4, that was a good outcome going into the rodeo road trip. Obviously, last night you wanted the win. 5-3 would have been phenomenal. I would have been dancing in the streets, probably going honking my car down Commerce Street last night if they went 5-3. But while the loss is disappointing, the performance put on by Ja Morant was breathtaking. 4-4 on the rodeo road trip, not so bad for the Spurs, and they're 5-4 in their last 9. So they got Sacramento on Thursday night, very winnable. They've got a better record than Sacramento. Spurs will be in their house at the AT&T Center. Apparently, Taro Kotani will be in the stands on Thursday night, so they should win that game.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. I mean, we've seen some unthinkable things happen against the Kings and what, the odd wins that they've been able to pull out so far this season. And, I woke up this morning not seeing the score yet for the Spurs, but seeing Ja Morant trending and seeing how he really did go off last night. So I wasn't necessarily too surprised about the Spurs, but you're right. Their last 10 games, they're 5-5. I think it's all you could really ask for given where this team is this season. And what was the number at the beginning of the year that all of the pundits were like, this is their max, this is their top?
The over-under, and I thought it was disrespectful, and the over-under was 28.5 wins. And some people had it, some sports books had it at 28. I think they're at 24 right now with 20 games to play. So, they're going to win probably 10 more games.
Yeah.
And win 34 games, which I expected. Granted, I'm a homer and I'm delusional and I'm a Spurs fan and I admit it. I'm cool with it. I said 41-41. I said 500, 41-41. They still have a shot.
Yeah.
I think they've got 34 losses right now. Yeah. So and two things, and Cynic said, I forget what the number Pop needed to start the season was to get the record. He now needs 1 win to tie Don Nelson for most regular season victories. He needs 2 to get the record. That's part of why Taro Kotani is coming from Tokyo. He hopes to see history made while he's at the AT&T Center for one of these Spurs games. But a lot of cynics said, oh, well, Pop won't even get to that record this year because the Spurs are going to be in last place and they're only going to win 20 games. Well, that is not the case. And as you mentioned, 5 of the last 9, 5 of the last 10 for the Spurs. They're kind of turning the corner a bit. So while I don't like the loss last night, I do feel better about where they are right now.
Now the Spurs back home after that rodeo road trip to play the Kings on Thursday night. Saturday, they're at the Hornets. Monday, they're at home against the suffering Lakers. You figure they win probably against the Kings. If they don't win against the Hornets, then that game against the Lakers would be Pop's huge game. And I know people will look at the Lakers this season, but I kind of like the added drama to then kind of, pour some salt in the wounds there with Pop's huge moment and for LeBron to be on the other end of it.
Yeah, and as I continue to look at the standings, Shannon, the Lakers right now in the 9 slot, they've got a 2.5 game lead over New Orleans, which is in the 10. You want to get to the 10 at least to get a play-in against number 9. So San Antonio right now is a game and a half behind New Orleans. Also, Portland's at 11, tied with New Orleans, but New Orleans has the tiebreaker. So at the moment, the Spurs are a game and a half out of that 10 slot. Lakers are at the 9 slot. So it's like, here you bring up that Lakers game. Lakers are a team the Spurs could face in a 1-game play-in in the postseason. So there's a lot to think about with the Los Angeles Lakers coming up. But you make a huge point, and it's time we started, kind of reading tea leaves and trying to figure out what night might pop set that record. And as you point out, it might be against the Lakers. By the way, Taro Kotani answered your question on how long that flight is from Tokyo, Japan to the United States and ultimately to San Antonio on the live video feed. Taro says, I'm flying to San Francisco first. That's a 9-hour flight. Then a 7-hour wait in San Francisco. Oof. What's up with that? And then a 4-hour flight to San Antonio. Just the flight time is 13 hours. You add the 7-hour wait in San Francisco, that is 20 hours of travel. My God, that's a little, that's a lot of traveling, man.
Well, I'm sure you've got to get to the airport nice and early for international travel. And then there's the fun of when you land in your final destination, you still have to mess with getting your bags and getting to wherever customs. It is you're going to have to go. Yeah. But best safe travels, best of luck. And, welcome back to Texas. Weather's turned for you. We're not icing this week. I don't think so.
And Shannon, you bring up the weather. Today is March 1st. I've been just waiting. I've been saying this for weeks with this cold weather. Get me to the month of March. That's when spring happens. Daylight saving time is Sunday, March 13th. So we're 12 days away from that. St. Patrick's Day is 16 days away. You being Irish, you must be a big St. Patrick's Day fan. Yet I walk out this morning. I go, it's March. Woo! Springtime is here. It's like 34 degrees this morning. Walking to my car and in the parking lot, walking into the building. So I'm still waiting for that whole March spring thing to kick in. It hasn't happened yet.
We'll get there. I think Saturday's looking really nice. That's going to shape up to be a nice day that I'll probably spend in the house, but I'm sure it'll be nice outside for those that care to enjoy it.
Ooh, 81 in San Antonio on Saturday. 82 on Sunday. So yeah, you're right. Things get better. By the way, speaking of the live video feed, we've elevated the class factor of the show. Louise Locker, aka Elf Louise, a San Antonio and South Texas and global icon. Louise Locker says, good morning, my favorite early birds. We love our Spurs no matter where they stand. And that's cool. I saw a thing, and maybe I'll pull it up a little bit later. Shannon, it had like all the NBA teams and their local market ratings for television, and the Spurs were something like 4th. I'll have to pull it up because I bookmarked it on my Twitter, so I'll have to go look at it. But I think the Golden State Warriors were really up there. But here the Spurs not having the seasons we are used to in the Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Manu, Tony eras. But, working at it, going with the youth movement, getting better all the time. But as Elf Louise Locker says, we're Spurs fans. So we love them no matter what. I think that's pretty cool. While Laker fans boo them 2 nights ago.
Yeah. That's really telling. Has there ever been a moment in your recollection of Spurs fans booing the Spurs?
I don't recall it. Spurs fans have always been very, very loyal. But, a lot of that, because I'm so old, was pre-social media era. You look at that, it's a minority of Spurs fans who are very vocal and cynical and spoiled, if you ask me, after all the years of Tim Duncan, David Robinson, and others. So I don't recall anybody booing them now for the last several years. God, since 2012, because I do Spurs radio. I used to go to games all the time. I used to be an in-arena host So I do things with the Coyote on the Jumbotron and stuff. But so I haven't gone to a game since like 2011. So, what I because I'm on the radio side now, I'm in the studio. So everything I hear is anecdotal. But I don't. And that's a good question. I know we have a lot of Spurs fans listening. Have the Spurs fans ever booed the Spurs? If they did, Shannon, I'd be disgusted because I think that's just so uncool. We talked about Laker fans booing the Lakers yesterday on the show, which was 2 nights ago. But to me, that's something like Philadelphia fans do. Eagle fans do that to the Eagles. Fans who are just mean and don't get it do that to their home team. I hope I never hear about that in San Antonio.
Well, and you mentioned the Lakers and then booing. The last time the Lakers were in town, I believe you were pretty upset, as well as some other fans, with how much yellow was in AT&T. So it's almost like instead of booing, Spurs fans just decide, I'm just not going to go. Let me sell these tickets to whoever will buy them.
That could be. Yeah.
So there could be
and
booing.
That has always been.
There could be booing on Monday when the Lakers are in town, but it's Lakers fans continuing to boo their team.
We will see. We got a lot to talk about all morning long. We will meet Jeremy Kolok, the Soundscape Stylist and the pride of Oklahoma State University. Coming up, a high five play of the day, which is just so cool. And actually, there's a connection to a friend of the show. And we'll actually, later on in the show, we'll talk to that friend of the show. So anyway, that's cool. Major League Baseball, what's going on? They've extended the deadline to today. So just after 7 o'clock, our baseball go-to guy, SCOTT MANDZIARA, will join us, tell us everything that's going on in the world of baseball, along with what up with Carlos Correa. Just lots going on in the world of baseball. And what does he see? When will this dispute, when will this lockout end? Shannon's Salty Shakedown, sports history, sports birthdays. You're welcome to join us not only on the live video feed, as many people already are this morning, but dial us up. We take your phone calls. You want to yap? Here's how you do it. 800-707-9760. 800-707-9760. She is her saltiness. Shannon, Salty Sweeney, well-rested on this Taco Tuesday, March 1st. We'll meet Jeremy Kolok coming right up. We're with you till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. Good morning, Louise Locker and everybody else. I'll see what names I read right now, who I see in here. Jason Paniagua. Jason giving me an update on Leica Cheesecake and Pastries on Broadway. Yesterday selling out again. That is so cool. Hector Gomez, Tracy Bogert on election day. Foamfoot 420, a.k.a. Amber, who says John Morant can play some ball. John Williams from Dallas. Anthony Del Toro. Taro Kotani from Tokyo. Jesse Bratton, good morning. Luisa Alanis. Sam Tobias. I think I said Wes Perkins. Dave Emilio Castinuela. Good morning. Hector Gomez. It's not in the DNA of Spurs fans to boo our Spurs. Amen, Hector. And I hope that never changes. You know, you and I are old school. We go all the way back to 1973. And look at that. Yeah, this is election day, Jason. Jason says, happy Texas Independence Eve. Make sure you vote today. Today is election day. So it's March 1st. It's Taco Tuesday. It's election day. So thank you, Louise. Louise, I was thinking about you the other day. I still want to do some kind of fun podcast with you. I haven't given up on that. You know, my life's been a little busier than usual lately. You know, as you know, and some people know, every other week I trade off with my sister. We are caregivers for our mom, who is 98. And, you know, it has been her wish not to go into an assisted living facility until there's no other choice. So, you we take care of her. I told somebody the other day, I've never had a child, but when you're taking care of a 98-year-old, it's kind of like and again, I've never had kids, but it's kind of like the approximation of having a child. It's more exhausting than I thought it would be. So, but we're happy to do it. It's actually an honor. I mean, she brought us into this world, so we're happy to be there for her at this time. So, anyway, that long story, Louise. I'm just my way of saying, every other week is crazy busy. Then you got Spurs games, so I do this show in the morning. Doing the Spurs games, when I had an afternoon show, it was a lot easier from a sleep deprivation standpoint. Doing them with this morning show is a little bit rough. Thank you, Louise. Yeah, let's talk soon. And I think one of these days, Louise, we just need to just do it. I mean, this same platform that we use here, it from your phone or your laptop, you can just jump in. We can do it. We can push it out, and we'll have fun with it. So, thank you, Louise. All right, I'm going to go heat my coffee. Does it need heating? I think I can make it through one segment with that. Let me check something. Check with. You can just nod. That audio, you got the audio for high five. And also when Carl comes on, it's him doing the call. So the rejoin at 8:05 with Carl, we'll use that as well. Thanks. All right. Steve Duraco. Well, and Louise, one of the things about this platform, and it's StreamYard, if people didn't know, is when we do our podcast, not only can we get live comments like you see, you're doing there, but you can send the link out to anybody to join you on the podcast, and part of, I know what we've talked about is, you being a counselor, just talking to people about how to live their life better and to live different circumstances better. So we can actually bring people on from wherever they are, as long as they got a phone or an internet connection and a device, iPad, laptop, whatever. That's something that we haven't done with this show, because you've got radio audio and then this audio, sometimes there's echoes. So, but with the thing that you and I are talking about, we don't have the radio component. So the technology is a lot simpler. So anyway, we'll talk about it. Steve Duraco, the original rock, the original Italian stallion, THE rock, THE, the human element. You know him, you love him. Co-founder of the San Antonio Polar Bear Club. And we were mocked over the weekend for not getting into the water lately, Steve Duraco. You are being accused of besmirching, it's one of my favorite words, besmirching the good name of the San Antonio Polar Bear Club. Lucinda Sullivan with the coffee emoji. This bud's for you. Jason, I don't know about live comments with the iHeartRadio app. Can you leave live comments? I haven't seen that. So I'm not sure what your question is. Maybe that's a new thing. I don't know. Look at this temperature. This is March 1st. I demand 75-degree temperatures. That is just ridiculous. Let me see what it is in Austin. It is 37 in Marfa, 43 in Houston, a balmy 43 in Houston. Austin, same deal, 36. 36 in Austin. Now, it's where I used to go in February, pre-COVID. 70 degrees in Cancun. The sun is up. It's 7:34 in the morning. And headed for a high of 81 today in Cancun. That's where I should be right now. Santa Cruz, Costa Rica, where I was a couple of years ago. It is currently 75 degrees. Headed for a high of 97 in Santa Cruz, Costa Rica today. What am I, a weatherman? Yeah, John, one of the problems is, and I've had her as a guest before many years ago on the radio, her hearing now. Her hearing is really bad because I'm so loud. When she gets on the phone, I can help her with that, but that would be kind of hard to do. But a good idea. 34 in Dallas. See, Tracy, you sent me something. What did you send me? Wow, Forbes magazine is saying the Spurs could be one of the hottest young teams in the NBA. I still believe that, and I say that, and people think I'm nuts. There's a lot of talent on this Spurs team. Here we come. Headphones are always a good idea.
Back to the Chris Duel Show.
Show with Shannon, Salty, Sweeney. It is March 1st. It is Taco Tuesday. And as somebody pointed out on the live video feed during the break, it is election day. Go out there and vote. So not only is it your civic duty to ingest mass quantities of tacos on a Taco Tuesday, but it is also your civic duty to go vote.
Well, and I think it's also
So go
everyone's
vote.
civic duty to vote for on our Twitter pages each and every day. That's something that you should wake up. You turn on the show and then you immediately, like all of us, because you pick up your phone and you go to social media. You go to Ticket 716 AM 1300 The Zone's Twitter pages to check out the Chris Duel Show poll question of the day. And we're going to be talking to Scott Mandziara later on this morning about everything going on in the world of baseball. We still don't have a start of the season officially yet. So we're asking today, how will the MLB impasse play out? Currently 11% saying something will be done today, Chris. This will all be resolved. We will know where we are going forward after today. 55% saying a resolution will occur sometime this month. 33% are saying games are going to be canceled. And luckily, no one's saying there's just not going to be a baseball season.
No. And I think, and one of the things, and Scott Mandziara, as you mentioned, Shannon will walk us through this. You know, yesterday was going to be the deadline. They negotiated for hours into the night, and then they said, all right, we'll make the deadline Tuesday. I'm not sure exactly, and Scott will tell us specifically when that deadline is going to be now today. I think the fact that both sides are, and this is kind of what happens in a negotiation. When you're up against the deadline, you go, all right, darn it, now we got to really hammer out an agreement. I think that's coming. We'll see if Scott pays a lot more attention to this than we do. We will see if he is as optimistic as we might be coming up. Before we do the high five play of the day, Shannon, I am remiss. We didn't get a chance to say hello to him in the first segment, but it is always great to have him back. He is the pride of Oklahoma State University, the hardest working man in radio now. He worked the Spurs game the other night. He works the UTSA games. He works this show. He works the Mike Taylor show. Jeremy Kolok, what is up, man?
I'm back in here. There's a lot of shows that they have me doing around here, as you mentioned. Don't forget the lawn and garden show.
The lawn and garden show.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. But there's nothing quite like doing the Chris Duel show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. So I'm happy to be in here, happy to be back, and happy to be talking sports. Although, it feels it's like the Spurs can't win the night before I come in here. We can't have baseball talks progress before I come in here or something. But I'm happy to be here.
Now, Jeremy,
you mentioned the lawn and garden show. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was gonna we usually kind of end the show asking who's gonna be our producer every day, and it's usually a toss up. With Dave no longer with us, I'm gonna be really worried if you ever end a show not knowing who our producer is gonna be, because I don't know that means we'll have anybody, and then we're gonna have problems.
Yeah, well, I can tell you right now that I'm scheduled with y'all for the rest of the week.
Okay,
but they kind of just schedule me
one
on
day
a
at a time
week basis. So yeah, exactly, one day at a time. But so we'll deal with that on Friday at the end of the show.
All right, so we know who's here for the rest of the week. It's you. So I mean, can we request you? Can we just like baseball? Can we negotiate and just make you the official dude to do this every morning so that we don't have to have musical chairs?
I assume you have some more pull around here than I do.
I got no pull around here.
That makes two of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see it out of the realm of possibility for sure. But I'm just, I just do what I'm told around here. You know who I am.
Now, if they did say, Scott, you're a sports guy. You wrote sports for the newspaper at Oklahoma State. You've covered sports for a lot of your life. We're going to put you on the show with Shannon and with Chris every morning. What about the morning wake-up call? Would you just hate life? Would you then quit this job? I mean, that's, as Shannon and I know, and as Shannon really knew yesterday, coming back from Vegas, it can be and as you know, a brutal wake-up call.
Yeah, it's I don't think anybody around here besides y'all kind of knows my sports background. I think it just kind of happened that way. So I don't know if that'll even be a factor, but I hate life for about 20 to 30 minutes when I first wake up at this time. And then I kind of push myself through it, and I feel great right now. So I don't know about y'all. I feel tremendous. Feels like a great morning at this point.
Beautiful.
Just after 6:42.
And what is your coffee? Did you tell us once that you don't drink coffee, so you feel great? Is this a caffeine-free energy rush that you're on?
I had a little bit of coffee, but okay. It's not like fueling me most mornings like you over there across the hallway.
God, I guzzle it. I would get an IV if I could put just coffee right into my veins and just get that caffeine flowing right away. I would do that. All right. We have a great show for you this morning. SCOTT MANDZIARA is going to run down everything going on in the baseball world. That's just a few minutes away after the top of the hour. And you'll hear more about him in a bit. But KARL SCHOENING, who has long been kind of like, he's a basketball savant, basketball guru, but he does all kinds of other sports broadcasting. So we'll have a lot to talk about with KARL SCHOENING at 8:06. 8:05, a little bit later this morning. Shannon's Salty Shakedown, sports birthdays, sports history, and a whole lot more. Your phone calls, if you want to dial us up, 800-707-9760. But right now, it is time for the high five play of the day, appropriately sponsored by High Five, 2 locations in the Austin area. Shannon, tell the people what they will find at High Five when they go?
Chris, I'm looking at the menu here. In Vegas, it was a lot of food and beverage, and not the best, not the healthiest of food and beverage. So I'm looking now. They've got a great salad. The High Five salad comes with obviously your greens and tomatoes, but diced apples, cheese, garlic, croutons, onion rings, and then this probably the best balsamic vinaigrette I've ever had. I'm craving it right now. And of course, as we mentioned, Taco Tuesday, you get $2 tacos on Tuesdays at High Five. And of course, happy hour from 4 to 6. So make sure you go and check it out and, get your salad, get your greens, and then go bowling or do Topgolf or do some axe throwing and be active. Make it a healthy adventure when you check out High Five. 2 Austin area locations, one out in Lakeway and one on Anderson Lane. Chris, today's High Five goes all the way down to San Antonio, all the way down from me up in Austin to San Antonio. We are going to the UTSA campus to give a high five today to the UTSA Roadrunner baseball team, because yesterday we are in the midst of college baseball season. At least we have that going for us right now as we figure out what's going on with the MLB. But they've, when it comes to college athletics, you got to play who's on your schedule. It's not like in the pros where you get to play everybody at some point. You can only play who's on your schedule. And UTSA, maybe not in the toughest league. It's not the Big 12. It's not the SEC. But they do have some ranked teams on their schedule, unfortunately, because of last week's icing. Or a couple weeks ago, they weren't able to play TCU, who is a ranked team. But yesterday, Chris, they played the number 2 team in the country in Stanford. Woo. And UTSA won it in a very fashionable style, a walk-off home run. We've got the call for you right here by our very own KARL SCHOENING. Here it is.
O'Rourke's 3-1. Swung on, sent into the deep center field. This one will be off of the wall. It'll score Sir Dashing, and UTSA upsets number 2 Stanford. The bat of Leighton Berry brings in the run of Shane Serdashny. UTSA wins their 5th in a row, and there's a dog pile.
Beautiful.
As Carl mentioned, that was the 5th win in a row for UTSA. They're now 7-1 to start the season. They've started pretty hot, I think, with this game. They're going to get on a lot of people's radars here. And Leighton Berry, who you heard hit that homer to win and walk off yesterday afternoon for UTSA, that is his 12th straight hit for a game. So he's on a bit of a hot streak, and they're going to need him down the stretch. Great start to the UTSA Roadrunners baseball season. And while we're at it, University of Texas, number 1 in the country. They're currently 9-0. So Central Texas baseball, we're having fun so far this season, Chris. It's kind of all right. We don't have MLB, right? Where we can pay more attention to our local teams here. But once again, high five to the Roadrunners. A fantastic win over a school who's always great when it comes to baseball. I mean, Stanford's not number 2 for no reason. They're a great team, and UTSA happens to knock them off yesterday.
Like you often do, and I know you did yesterday because you needed your sleep. We do this show early in the morning, and I take a nap midday, especially because I had a Spurs broadcast last night. So I woke up from my nap, and then I jumped on Twitter, and I saw that UTSA won this game against Stanford. And, oh, by the way, Stanford at number 2 in the country, that is the highest-ranked team in any athletic endeavor that is played on the campus at UTSA. Back in 2012 in baseball, UTSA knocked off number 1 Baylor, but that game was at Waco. Mm-hmm. So number 2 Stanford coming to UTSA. They were the biggest ranked in any sport to show up and play sports at UTSA. UTSA beats them, as you mentioned, which was great. So I retweeted up. Oh, this is great. How cool. Then I realized, because I see him tweeting, KARL SCHOENING, friend of the show, son of our Wednesday friend of the show, Bill SCHOENING. As you just heard, KARL was on the call for the Conference USA Network, which is an even added bonus. KARL's such a great guy and such a great broadcaster, and he loves sports. And I did notice, as a longtime appreciator of play-by-play people, Vin Scully was the master at doing this. When there's a big moment and you're a play-by-play man or woman, after it happens, you back off and you let the crowd tell the story. Granted, it wasn't a big packed Major League Baseball stadium, but right after that moment with that RBI, you hear Carl just stop and let you hear, and we'll play this again when Carl comes on the show at 8:05. Carl is wise enough as a broadcaster to realize you let the crowd have its moment in a moment like that as well. And I heard him do that, which is just masterful. So I love that UTSA did that and knocked off number 2 Stanford at UTSA. And secondly, our good friend Karl Schoening on the call. That's just so cool. Just such a great sports family. It's funny. Yesterday, Shannon, Bill Schoening was in the building during the rodeo road trip. He's been doing his games from where Jeremy and I are at the iHeart Studios in San Antonio. So I walked in and I said, Bill, I'm going to have Carl on the show tomorrow because he had that great call against Stanford. Plus, we'll talk hoops, college and pro hoops with Carl. And he goes, so you're going to have Carl tomorrow. You're going to have me on the show Wednesday. He goes, I got a brother in Philly who's a bookie. Do you want him on the show Thursday? I go, yeah, we'll get gambling tips from your brother, Vinny, or whatever his name was. I forgot what his name was. So we are taking our tour of the Schoening family this week, which is great fun. And they are a tremendous family and great talent as well.
And Carl, we've crossed paths a few times in our radio careers, and that was the first time I've heard like a call of his. And it's astounding how much he sounds like his father, but also he's got his own little flair to it. And I think it's easy for people who are maybe in media to think, oh, he just got it because his dad's. Carl is probably the biggest grinder I know in this business as far as all of the stuff that he does. And he really is fantastic at it. So excited to have him on the show with us today to talk sports and also some basketball. We'll get some basketball in there with Carl for sure.
Yeah, Carl is a basketball savant. And in fact, now that we're in March, it is the month of March Madness. So we'll probably lean on Carl probably more as we get closer to NCAA tournaments and then the conference tournaments and the NCAA tournament. Speaking of which, Shannon, I got to get your thoughts. And I was, tracking the game last night during the Spurs game, the final game at the Frank Irwin Center last night. It was Baylor versus Texas, and Texas led early, but let it get away at the end. Baylor walked out of there with a win to close out the Frank Irwin Center. Your thoughts on last night's finale at the Frank Irwin Center for the Texas Longhorns men's basketball team?
Yes, and you mentioned finale. The women's finale and senior night will be on Saturday. So there is one more opportunity to see basketball played at the Irwin Center. It was senior night. The big ovation came, of course, for Andrew Jones. It's crazy he's a senior now because it does feel like he's been there forever, and he's been a joy and a pleasure to watch play on that floor. It's a tall ask to try and beat Baylor anytime, and not to mention they are the reigning national champions. You can only play who's on your schedule, and you can only play them when they're scheduled, and unfortunately, that's just how the draw went. So not a win like we would have hoped. And you mentioned Texas did hold a lead. I believe at halftime it was 30-27 Texas. But the tides ended up shifting. There's kind of this feeling of, if you go look through the stats, this trend of Texas tends to lose if they allow their opponent to score more than 60 points. Doesn't always happen. The last game over the weekend against West Virginia, they ended up pulling that one out after a close one, and both teams did score more than 60. But Baylor ends up getting the win 68-61 against Texas last night.
So much to talk about in the world of sports on this Taco Tuesday, this first day of March. Coming up, we'll check in with our baseball analyst, SCOTT MANDZIARA. The negotiations between Major League Baseball and the Players Association extended into today, that self-imposed deadline by MLB. What's the latest on that? We'll talk about that and all things Carlos Correa. What else is happening in the world of baseball as well? NFL, NBA, college hoops, and more. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. Jeremy Kolok making the show go. We're with you till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. Look at this question. Angel Johnson, or Angel, says, off topic, who is more beautiful, Alicia Keys or Halle Berry? I'd choose Alicia. I think they're both beautiful. I might lean Alicia, but they're both, it's hard to quantify. I've never been posed that specific question before, but thank you. Thanks for joining us from YouTube. And again, we're open to all questions. So I will join, I'll join you. I'll lean Alicia on that. All right. I think I will heat the coffee this time. Scott let me get my Scott Mandziara photo ready. There he is. Scott Mandziara going to join us here in just a few. Looking very dapper in the suit and tie. See, television people wear what Scott Mandziara is wearing. Radio people wear baseball caps and T-shirts. And as always, whoops. I guess that's not, okay, never mind. Do I have these with Jeremy on it? There he is. All right, I'll be back in a flash. I'll be back with hot coffee, which is necessary and beautiful. Praise Tom Landry. I may need there's SCOTT MANDZIARA. I may need some cardboard Breggy in the shot. Because we're talking baseball. Alex Bregman, ladies and gentlemen. Should be higher than that. Beth Settle, good morning. James, people are responding to the Halle Berry question. Halle Berry or Alicia Keys. And we've got a Russian bot in here. Thank you. Whoops. Suman Kadri. Not today, Putin. But it is election day, so maybe the Russian bots are active today. But it's just a primary. So Jason Paniagua says, I choose Rihanna. Sam Tobias says, Suman Kadri will be like AOL and say, goodbye. AOL, man. That'll bring back some memories. John Williams says, Putin is targeting civilians. Yeah, I saw there are reports of carpet bombing of neighborhoods. And this morning, I heard that reportedly a huge Russian convoy is headed for Kiev or Kyiv, the capital. So it's a pretty awful situation. But interestingly, the European Union and Western democracies are really clamping down on Russia economically, and the banking systems are now seemingly on board. That's him? Cool, thanks. Let me see. Look at Scott's Facebook, see if there's anything else going on in the world of Scott Mandziara. Here we go. On this opening sequence, I mute for a moment because of the evil overlords at Facebook.
Now, Chris Duel.
It is Taco Tuesday. It is the first day of March. It is election day, or at least primary day, depending on what you're voting in. Lots going on in the world, and certainly in the world of sports, which is what we cover with you. The Chris Duel Show with Shannon, Salty, Sweeney, Jeremy Kolok, the pride of Oklahoma State University and the hardest working man in radio, making the show go. And one of the hardest working men in radio, and a man who did what Jeremy Kolok is now doing while juggling all kinds of other things, including he was, when he was in San Antonio, the voice of UIW athletics, but has always been a huge baseball fan, analyst, and broadcaster. And since Elvis's birthday, January 8th, he is the proud father of Lindsay Michelle Mandziara. We're talking about the lovely and talented Scott Mandziara from St. Louis, Missouri this morning. Scott, what is going on?
Oh, man, it is March, like you said, Chris. I'm fired up. I was a little pessimistic about 16 hours ago, but I'm fired up, ready for March, ready for spring, maybe ready for some baseball.
Well, and I was talking about that, Scott, and, you know, we wanted to get you on knowing that the big deadline was yesterday, the self-imposed deadline for negotiations by Major League Baseball. I got to believe the fact that they negotiated for several hours and I think into the night and then extended that self-imposed deadline to today. And of course, for people who don't know, if they didn't reach the deadline, they were saying they were going to cancel opening day of baseball on March 31st and that first week. I got to believe it's a good sign that they're still talking and they've pushed back the deadline. Is that your perspective as well?
Yeah, it's a great sign. The fact that they went at it for 16 hours until 2 a.m. Eastern time. Remember, these owners are not strapping young bucks, Chris. They're in their 70s, their 80s. They're up till 2 in the morning trying to negotiate with the Players Association, who, by the way, it's not like a family get-together there. It's like a heated discussion with people you don't want to hang out with for some reason. So it's not like they were enjoying their company at 2 a.m., throwing back a couple of Bud Lights. So the fact that they stayed together was fantastic news. Now, the big story to follow today is going to be how much the players are willing to give back to the owners, because the owners did a big thing yesterday. They agreed to 12-team expanded playoffs, even though they tried to incentivize a ton for the 14-team playoffs, and this is great. The 12-team is way better for baseball. You have 162 games to play. They're so much more meaningful than if you have half the league close to making the postseason. So it was a huge, huge day for the Players Association to see the owners agree to anything that they have suggested.
So, Scott, you mentioned that the players are going to need to give something back to the owners. What do you expect that the players will come back with here to make the owners happy?
So the big thing that I expect is going to have to do with the luxury tax, because where the owners are trying to get the players at is they're not trying to really up it at all. It's at $220 million. The players want at least $230, and they started at $245. So the owners have it broken out as $220 million for the next 3 years. Then they go up $4 million in the fourth year and $10 million in the fifth year. So the players see it as, okay, like we all know inflation. So how much more money at the beginning of baseball is growing. if you're not going to give us any money for 3 years any more than you're giving us this year, why is that even a starter for us? So that's where they stand pretty steady on the whole time. And I expect that the players will go down to 230, even though they were at 245, to get a deal done. I mean, everyone has all eyes on baseball right now, and not the good kind of eyes. It's an ugly situation. The public perspective is starting to see that owners are actually giving back. So it's going to be really insightful to watch today if the players decide to say, okay, like we'll feed back a little bit too, or if they're going to say, you know what, we're standing our ground. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Big day. He is Scott Mandziara, our baseball analyst. So keep an eye on baseball all day long. And Scott, I've been talking to Shannon about this, and baseball, especially coming out of the pandemic, everybody's lives have been altered for now. The anniversary is coming up, going on 2 years now. You and I were on the radio here on this station when life completely changed and the pandemic kicked in. I just think if baseball either canceled a significant number of games and or the whole season, I just think, I think it would be catastrophic for baseball. I think baseball really needs traction right now. And I really think sports fans really need baseball right now. Me and Shannon, we're huge football fans, so we're looking forward to the USFL. But, it's really not springtime in America without baseball. And I think if they don't get this done, I think baseball, both sides, players and owners, would be doing a disservice to Americans and sports fans. I think they've got an obligation to deliver this game to us in the springtime, and now we're in March. It's time to make this thing happen.
Oh, I agree 100%, Chris. Let me give you a good comparison here. So Friday night, I'm flying back from New Jersey back to St. Louis. Okay, and my airport, or I was in New Jersey. So we were supposed to take off at 1:30 in the afternoon. So I'm at the airport at 12 o'clock, okay? They delay my flight. So I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, ticked off. So they move it to 4 o'clock. Okay, fine. Like, I'll deal with it. So then 3 o'clock comes around. They delay it again until 6. Long story short, they delay it all the way till 9:30. So I am at the airport for 9.5 hours. I am extremely mad at these delays. I'm wondering if I'm going to get home to see my baby girl. And I'm asking them, I'm like, I will forgive everything as long as you don't cancel my flight tonight. And I got on the plane and I came home to St. Louis. I don't write a bad review about United. I say this all to say the same thing with baseball. They delayed this so long, all the way to the last hour. They even added another day. If they get a deal done today, baseball fans, they'll forgive them.
Yep.
Opening day will happen. We'll forget all of this ever happened. If they don't, then you get that bad review. You get that sour taste in your mouth. You say, I'm never flying United again. I don't want to watch baseball right now. They ticked me off. So that's the best real life example I can give you of how I feel about the way that MLB negotiations are going on.
Scott, yesterday, some big news out of the world of baseball was Derek Jeter stepping down as CEO of the Marlins. Do we know why and why right now? It seems interesting with all of the talks going on to get the season started that he would go ahead and step aside at this moment.
That's a great question, Shannon. So I read through his resignation letter practically, and everything that I read through it is that he is saying that when he took over with the Marlins, he envisioned them winning. Obviously, they haven't won very much the last 5 years. But here's the reason why he stepped down. Because the ownership right now is not committed to spending money like a lot of teams in baseball. So he said, okay, we have one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. You guys aren't going to want to add. You don't want to add Nicholas Castellanos. You don't want to pay him $100 million. Are you ever going to pay somebody $100 million? How are we ever going to win a season if you don't want to, back up the Brinks truck and pay somebody that's going to be exciting? Again, we have one of the best young staffs in baseball that we don't have to pay for multiple years to get them big money. So why aren't we trying to win? That's what Derek Jeter's saying. He is a winner through and through with the New York Yankees. That's his entire stage of his career. The Marlins decided, you know what, we're not going to pay. And that obviously hasn't been come out and said practically, but that's reading between the lines why I think Derek Jeter left.
What do you think now? It's a fascinating scenario that you described, Scott, regarding Derek Jeter. Obviously, a huge name in the world of baseball. He's a huge brand. And again, as you mentioned, part of his brand is winning. So now stepping down as the CEO of the Miami Marlins and having been a shareholder, What do you think is next for him? Does he go and seek another team, or does another team say, hey, here's a guy committed to winning, here's a guy who can make things happen, let's go court Derek Jeter and get him involved with our team? What do you think is next for Derek Jeter?
I think what's next for him, I think someone's going to target him for the broadcast booth. I know he's never been like a super outgoing guy, but I never really thought A-Rod was a super outgoing guy, and I think he's awesome on Sunday Night Baseball. So I think Derek Jeter ends up getting into the broadcast booth. I think that's where he moves, and then he might be there for a year or two, and then he'll get back in baseball ops. I don't think that he can be back in baseball ops just right away, because you go from being a CEO of a team and another team's, even though he wants to win, he didn't win. What's his track record right now? So give him a year or two to really try to find the right option. And right now is probably one of the most difficult times to join a new organization in MLB history.
Scott, you mentioned broadcasting, and something Chris and I loved about this recent football season was the Manning cast. We're hearing that the MLB is trying to create their own version of that. I would assume to try and engage more fans and engage in a different way than they ever have before. What do you think, or your thoughts on a broadcast like that, and who are your ideal guys to be in that booth?
That is such a great question, Shannon. I love the idea. I think it would be great because people love watching these superstar athletes. The reason the Manning cast works because everybody knows who the Mannings are. I can go out of my car and walk down the street to somebody that's not a football fan. They probably have heard of Peyton Manning, okay? So you have to do the same thing with baseball. You got to get the biggest guys in the sport. I'm not saying that Derek Jeter necessarily has to be that guy, or I don't know who the heck could be that guy. But that's the kind of thing that you got to be looking for if you're baseball. You have to go for the biggest home run possible to get the thing off the ground. Because otherwise, it's hard for the average baseball fan to really get excited for a random matchup once a week. Football is just so much different with them only having, a fraction of the baseball game. So it makes it much more exciting. And usually when the Manning cast is on, it's usually a pretty good game. So it's hard to really match that up for baseball. I think they're going to try, just like the NBA is going to try. I'm sure the NHL is going to try, because why the heck wouldn't they? ESPN had a home run with that.
Well, and you mentioned A-Rod performing better than we expected him to on that Fox panel. A guy like him, Big Papi. I mean, if you can find some big personalities, and as you say, Scott, it's got to be somebody we know and is a household name. I love the idea. We talked about it with you last year when they did the Field of Dreams game in Iowa, which was outside of the box and innovative. I really believe taking a page from the Manning cast and figuring out who the right personalities are, and you would need big personalities to pull it off. But I mean, that's part of, even before football became as huge as it is, Scott, that was one of the things about baseball. You had big personalities, whether they were managers or players over the years. Baseball was known for its personalities. I got to believe there's a way to cast this perfectly and really kind of take baseball viewership to another level.
Yeah, I agree. They will try something. I'm not sure if it's going to be a home run out the gate like the Manning cast, but here's one of my favorite things. I'm not sure what your guys' favorite thing about the Manning cast was. He got players that are in the league, literally played the night before, the day before, and they're interviewing them. That just doesn't happen in broadcasting too much. When you're the affiliate of the team, maybe you get the player the next day on a show or whatnot. But it doesn't happen, especially on TV, where you see those guys in their comfort zone, just relaxing, having that, end of the bar talk. Like, it's so exhilarating to watch because you're so excited to hear what they're all about. You just learn so much about them personally. I think that's what makes the Manning cast so good.
Well, Scott, if this lockout does come to an end and come to an end soon, obviously the season would be just around the corner. And before the lockout, big talks with big contracts, specifically with Carlos Correa and the Astros, wondering what's going to happen with him. The second this lockout ends, how quickly do you think we'll see him get a deal done? And do we still think that he has a chance to continue playing with the Astros?
I think if there was a situation that had to happen for Carlos Correa to return to the Astros, this would be that situation. Right now, he is in Houston, I'm sure, right now, with, everything that he already has set in stone. You're going to see Carlos Correa, Chris Bryant, Trevor Story, all these guys go for like 1-year deals. That's what I think is going to happen. I can't guarantee it, But I just can't imagine that you're going to be able to get a long-term deal done in a matter of 30 days. Plus, we've seen in the past when seasons didn't start on time and you get those deals done at the last second, those players take a while to get going. Because think about it. If they get a deal done today, spring training starts next week, and they don't have a deal done, they don't have anywhere to report to. So they have to get it delayed even farther. The Cardinals signed Greg Holland the day before the season started a couple of years ago, and at the time, he was the premier closer. He was terrible for them the entire year. It was a disaster signing. So it's when you have these weird off seasons, you got to just have the 1-year deal. The players, the agents, they're not going to want to do that. But right now, the ownership is going to have all of the bargaining power.
Scott Mandziara talking baseball with us. And Scott, from your perspective, I know it's, and Shannon brings up Carlos Correa, and that is one of, as an Astros fan and as a baseball fan, that's one of my biggest question marks. Where's he going to land? As you describe, does this scenario work out in the Astros' favor to give them a better opportunity to keep him in an Astros uniform? I realize that officially during the lockout, you're not supposed to talk to other teams. There's not supposed to be negotiations. But in reality, do you believe that there are back channel talks between Carlos Correa's agent and not only the Astros, but other baseball teams? Or do you think people are adhering to this, very, very seriously and not breaking these rules?
Well, I want to believe the second option, so they're not breaking the rules, but I'm with you on the first option. Here's how it works. It's the same way that these college athletes were probably getting paid for the last decade before the NIL. If you're a member of the team, or if you're a coach on the team, or the athletic director, and you got a buddy that's not affiliated with the school, and that buddy talks to that agent, and they have a communication, that's legal, right? And then maybe that buddy goes back to the athletic director, hey, here's what Carlos Correa's agent's saying, here's what they're thinking. That technically is probably breaking the rules, but how do you catch it?
Yeah.
How do you say that? Like this bystander or his friend, how does he have any credibility? They could totally just be messing around, and no one's going around being able to snoop for it until someone reports it, and then they get caught and they open an investigation. You don't have to worry about it. And also, it's not just one guy that everybody's eyes on. It's not like Carlos Correa is the only big name free agent out there right now. You have many players that you'd have to keep an eye on to try to watch that. So I have a hard time believing that they didn't have some kind of offer, some kind of deal before the lockout, and they just didn't want to sign it because they wanted to see what else is out there.
He is Scott Mandziara. He is our go-to guy on all things baseball, and he is a great follow on Twitter at @SMandziara2. And if you can't spell Mandziara, you're in your car, just go to either Ticket 760 AM 1300 The Zone or Shannon or my Twitter page. We've pushed out today's lineup, and you can just click on Scott Mandziara's name on Twitter and then go follow him. Scott, we'll probably grab you again as developments progress or don't progress in these negotiations with Major League Baseball. Once again, the latest we're hearing is that negotiations will resume at 10 o'clock this morning Central Time, and the current new deadline to get a deal or cancel opening day in the first week of the season will be 4 o'clock this afternoon. So as you've mentioned, a big day this Tuesday to keep an eye on Major League Baseball. Scott Mandziara, outstanding as always, sir. We'll talk again real soon. Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Chris, the deal's getting done today. Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate always talking to you guys. I'll talk to you here soon. I can't wait to talk some real baseball.
Love it. Thank you so much, Scott Mandziara. And Scott just said the deal's getting done today. And Shannon, you probably won't get the reference, but you know the man, Red McCombs, big-time backer of Texas Longhorn sports. For the longest time, his TV commercials in San Antonio had a catchphrase: when you deal with red, the deal gets done. So whenever there was a negotiation in sports, I said, just bring in Red McCombs, man. When you deal with red, the deal, like when the Cowboys were negotiating with Dak Prescott, I said, just bring in Red McCombs. When you deal with red, the deal gets done. Let's get this damn deal done. So hopefully it gets done. And you asked to me, Shannon, what the big question is. Not only for Astros fans, obviously for Astros fans, but I think for Carlos Correa is easily, I think, one of the top 5 players in the game right now. And I just think the Astros need to move heaven and earth to try to keep that guy. Give him a piece of the team. Do whatever you have to do. You need to keep Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa together no matter what. It's going to be real. If Scott's right, Shannon, and there's a deal today, immediately we need to get on Carlos Correa watch, because hopefully one way or another something's going to happen real soon with that guy.
Yeah, but I do like that Scott said, if there was something that was going to happen to really keep him around, and with the start of the season being so quickly after this gets resolved, maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe he'll stick around. Maybe.
Yeah. And I've earlier in the show, Shannon, I apparently offended a Philadelphia 76ers fan, or a Philadelphia fan. Good morning. I listen every day. So David Grant, first of all, thank you for listening every day. We appreciate that. But as a dual citizen of Philadelphia, my hometown, and San Antonio, I found it especially comical that you took a shot at Philadelphia fans when we support our teams through thick and thin with viewership and revenue. 76ers are number 2 on the list of views that you mentioned. Yeah, and I was talking about television ratings for the NBA, and I'll pull that up a little bit later in the show. Behind Golden State, number 1 in merchandise sold, as a member of the Green Legion. I didn't know that's what Eagles fans were called. I guess they are, Shannon. Eagles fans consistently have 16,000 to 18,000 fans attend the games in Jerry World. David, you make some strong points, and I appreciate your passion standing up for Philadelphia. As you know, Bill Schoening, who we have on the show every Wednesday, and Karl Schoening, who's going to join us at 8:05. They're big Philadelphia. Bill's from Philly, and Karl inherited that fanship from Bill, so they're fans of many Philadelphia teams, so I get it. But my point was, and I've been to Lincoln Financial Field a few times in Philadelphia for football games, Eagles fans are just mean. And I was talking about booing teams. You can't tell me, David, that Eagles fans and Sixers fans and Phillies fans haven't booed their home team. The whole reason the conversation came up was kind of a cynicism and just fans who behave badly and boo their teams. And the worst thing, Shannon, I remember to this day, the Cowboys in their blue jerseys at Veterans Stadium taking on the Eagles. Michael Irvin gets hit viciously and awkwardly, and he's on the ground, and he's carried off on a stretcher. And we didn't know if Michael Irvin was paralyzed. We didn't know how the severity of the injury. It looked like a neck injury. They cut off his face mask. They had him strapped on the gurney. They had tape around him, and Eagles fans were cheering and laughing that Michael Irvin was severely injured. David, I appreciate and respect your being a fan of, your hometown, Philly. But I think most observers would agree with me that in general, Philadelphia fans can be very nasty and very ugly and behave very badly. Shannon, am I out of line for saying that?
I don't think so. And, like we talk with jinxes, it's not 100%. They're trends. So that's great if you, David, are one of the good ones. We appreciate that. And we appreciate you listening each morning.
We do. And they're, Bill Schoening, for crying out loud. There are very good ones. I get one of my brother-in-law, Bill Gandy, who has since passed away, and I would give him crap all the time, and he'd give me crap because he was from Philly. He was an Eagles fan. I'm a Cowboys fan. We would go after it all the time in a good-natured way. So I'm not saying all Philadelphia fans are bad. I'm just saying
the first thing I thought of was, do you remember when there was Nelson Aguilar was on the Eagles and he kept dropping
USC
passes.
Guy, yeah.
And there was the Eagles fans kept taking shots at him in public and stuff. And there was news interviews. I think there was a news interview where a guy saved a baby from a burning building. And in his news interview or whatever with the local news station, he was like, yeah, at least I didn't drop the ball like Nelson Aguilar or whatever. So I don't know. I feel like I see where you're coming from. I think this guy I think he just got a little hurt, and I think he's just trying to say that his fans are passionate, which they are. Philly fans are passionate, but they are kind of mean.
They're
They are
mean.
kind of mean. Maybe you should have taken a shot at Cleveland or some other random
but
city.
but they're not as mean as Philly. And what they used to do as well, and the Cowboys used to always have to wear their helmets on the sidelines. They would throw snowballs in the wintertime and put batteries in the snowball and then throw the snowball at Cowboys players at Veterans Stadium. So I'm just in all fan bases, I think you could make the argument, and I think it's a badge of honor for a lot of Philadelphia fans. You could make the argument Philly fans are the nastiest. All right, we're a little bit late for a break, but had to cover David's comments. David, I appreciate, when you want to call us out, do it. I mean, we appreciate the sentiment.
He said at the end of his comment he was going to keep supporting the local show, and that he wished us a good rest of the show. So.
Oh, good. See, on my screen, I didn't see the end of his comment. I'd have to go find it on Facebook. So thank you, David. And we can agree to disagree, and we appreciate it, and we can have fun along the way. Great music after talking baseball. Coming up, Shannon's Salty Shakedown, sports history, sports birthdays, and more. KARL SCHOENING, a Philadelphia fan, going to join us just after 8 o'clock. Don't go anywhere. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. He's Jeremy Kolok with you till 9 on the Chris Duel Show. John, I do not still have Scott Mandziara's photo still up. I think there's something wrong with your Facebook feed. There is no photo of Scott Mandziara still up. Just saying. All right. All right. I'm going to grab some more ice, baby, for my iced tea. Cello Dean Stone. Gold Peak. Unsweet. Now, that's unlike me because I'm just very sweet, especially to David. And Philadelphia fans everywhere. And part of that also, as a Cowboys fan, I've got a lot of angst against Eagles fans throwing snowballs with batteries at Cowboys fans and cheering Michael Irvin's catastrophic injury. Seemingly catastrophic injury. Back in a sec. I've got my ice. Ice, baby. Woo! Woo! Here we go. Woo woo! Woo! John Williams, I do not think the Spurs will retire
We're back. It's the
Patty Mills number.
9760.
Little Eric Clapton for you. Lay Down Sally. Submitted for your approval by Soundscape Stylist Jeremy Kolok. Welcome in. It is the Chris Duel Show with Shannon, Salty, Sweeney. I went a little late on the previous segment defending my attacks on Philadelphia sports fans. So let's get right to it. We are moments away from Shannon's Salty Shakedown. Quick program note, Philly fan KARL SCHOENING certified yoga instructor, play-by-play dude, and basketball savant, and baseball broadcaster with a huge call yesterday. KARL SCHOENING going to join us just after 8 o'clock. But first, how about some sports birthdays and this day in sports history? March 1st, 1949, former world heavyweight boxing champion Joe Louis retires with a record of 66-3-0, including 52 knockouts. He defended his world title a record 25 times. That Joe Louis cat was pretty good. On this day in 1981, Houston Rockets guard Calvin Murphy misses a free throw in a 102-86 loss in San Antonio, ending his NBA record consecutive free throw streak at 78. And finally, on this day in 1996, Atlanta Hawks head coach Lenny Wilkins, easy for me to say, Lenny Wilkins, becomes the first coach in NFL history to reach 1,000 career victories when the Hawks beat the Cleveland Cavaliers 74-68, to which Gregory Charles Popovich said, "Hold my beer." Pop now up around 1,400 career wins. And a couple of big ones coming up for Coach Popovich. That's your sports history. How about some sports birthdays? Born on this day in 1914, legendary baseball play-by-play man for the Chicago Cubs, Harry Carey. By the way, Bill Schoening does a great Harry Carey impersonation. Maybe we'll ask him to do that tomorrow. Harry Carey was born on this day in 1914 in St. Louis, Missouri. He passed away in 1998. Born on this day in 1926, one of the most prolific commissioners in NFL and sports history, Alvin Pete Rozelle. Pete Rozelle, the NFL commissioner from 1960 to 1989, oversaw the huge expansion of the NFL. When he took over in 1960, baseball was the number one sport in America. By the time he was done, football would be its rightful place as the greatest sport on the face of this earth. Pete Rozelle was born in Southgate, California. He passed away in 1996. Born on this day in 1953, Dallas Cowboys linebacker Thomas Hollywood Henderson, Super Bowl champion in 1977. He had some personal problems, but has been sober for over 30 years, and he won the lottery twice. Thomas Hollywood Henderson was born in and resides in Austin, Texas. And finally, born on this day in 1994, NFL wide receiver, currently with the Kansas City Chiefs. He's pretty good. Tyreek Hill, born on this day in 1994 in Lauderhill, Florida. That's your sports birthdays. That's your sports history. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends, Romans, countrymen, farm animals, pole assassins, and monkeys, here it is, your March 1st Salty Shakedown.
All right, well, let's talk a little football, Chris. The Bucs currently in a bit of a situation, not knowing who their starting quarterback is going to be for the next year. And, of course, last year with the NFL changing the rule that teams could have an alternate helmet. They could have two different helmets. In 2013, they did away with it. So the Bucs fans and people who just like to see those creamsicle jerseys were upset. They didn't get those jerseys. And with the new rule being implemented last year, they were hoping that it would come, that the creamsicle jerseys would make a return. And they are. They are. Just not this past season, obviously, and not even next year, Chris. It's going to be 2023, as the Bucs announced yesterday, because due to all of the global supply shortage issues, Nike just can't get them done. And I think what they mean by that is Nike can't get them done for the team and for the shop. So they can, of course, make as much money as they can off of those jerseys. I'm sure they would have loved to have pumped them out and have Tom Brady wearing one, because you can only imagine how much of a Tom Brady jersey, I mean, in the creamsicle, that they would sell out immediately. They probably are in a better spot now with that global supply shortage that Tom Brady is not on that team. But how excited are you to see these come back in 2023, of course, with that alternate white helmet with the Buccaneer logo.
See, I know their fans love them. And, I was around in 1976 when the Buccaneers debuted and went winless and were just they were a joke. And now they've become kind of kitschy and classic. I'm happy to see them back. I'm old school. So, and I know the fans love them. So more power to them. I kind of look forward to it.
Yeah, I think they're good fun. They kind of remind me of those Color Rush uniforms. But it is fun to have things switch up from time to time, and I think fans will certainly enjoy them. And if you are a Bucs fan, you will, though, have to wait till 2023. Bucs also announced as one of the teams that will be playing in Germany for the first time when the NFL heads over that way. All right, our second story today, Chris. It's Fat Tuesday. It's Mardi Gras season. Everyone go get your beads, go get your king cake, do all the fun things, and maybe you enjoy a parade. Of course, New Orleans, known for Mardi Gras and all of the festivities that take place. There were parades over the weekend, and Chris, there was a float. And I'm not going to say they honored Zion Williamson because they made fun of Zion Williamson, as of course he isn't really contributing much to the Pelicans other than a fair amount of drama with all of the injuries and just the lack of actually playing for that team. And during a parade over the weekend, a float came across, and on the float was a depiction of Zion Williamson. He was overweight. On his jersey, it had 1 ton written on it. There's also a cast on his foot. He was holding a foot-long sandwich and a bunch of cash. And he had a little speech bubble that read, "I'm hungry." Listen, he's like your only chance. Like, what are you gonna do if he leaves? Like, that team's not gonna be. He is the star that you need. You're not doing a great job at trying to convince him to stick around if this is how fans are behaving. And on Mardi Gras, no less. You know how much thought people put into those floats? And this is what they came up with, Chris. I just don't think it's a good look for the city of New Orleans.
Yeah, after Anthony Davis left you, and now Zion reportedly having an affinity for Madison Square Garden and the Knicks. You're right. That would be like San Antonio during Fiesta if we would have put a negative make fun of Tim Duncan float. How stupid is that? And granted, Zion Williamson is probably causing a lot of angst among Pelicans fans, but you don't take shots at him if you want him to keep him around. That's weird and that's wrong. I agree with you.
If I'm Zion, I'm pretty upset that this is how the fans or supposed fans are treating me. Finally today, Chris, it's not a sports story, but it is Taco Tuesday, and we love talking about tacos. And so I had to bring this up because this is just wild and weird, and I want to know if you're willing to try it. Brock's Candy, or as I like to call them, Bratches, because it makes my mom mad. But Brock's Candy has a new jelly bean pack, the Late Night Taco Truck jelly beans. And you can currently get them at Target and other retailers for the price of $2.99. And, sir, the flavors include margarita, churro, salsa, guacamole, beef taco, and sriracha. Wow. The reviews thus far have not been kind as far as the taste testing is concerned. I don't know how they do it. I'm on the fence of whether or not I'd be willing to go for this. Especially like the looking at the jelly beans, margarita and guacamole, they're both green. If you're expecting margarita and you put in guacamole, that's a mistake. True. That's disappointing. Your thoughts on the Late Night Taco Truck jelly bean pack, and is it honestly is it a bad look for? They're making fun of taco trucks. That's rude to taco trucks to try and come out with that and say, hey, instead of going to your local taco truck that is deliciousness, just come into a Walgreens and grab some jelly beans.
I wonder though. Maybe what they're saying is, if you just buy these jelly beans, you can in your car take the taco truck with you wherever you go. Maybe it's weird, very weird, Shannon, but so weird. I'm curious. And I will probably go buy a pack just to taste them. I'm sure. Jelly beans are supposed to be sweet. I'm sure a guac or a taco jelly bean is going to be weird. But I'm interested in the margarita jelly bean as well. So I'll give it a shot.
I remember when Harry Potter came out in the movies, and so what's the other, like the main jelly bean company came out with the version from the movies, and of course they've got some great ones, and then also just some like boogers and things like that, and you're like, I don't know that I want to try that. I'm not that age anymore where I'm like, if there's a chance that this is not going to be good, I don't know that I want to take that risk, especially when it comes to a jelly bean. I don't need the extra sugar, but there it is, today's salty shakedown.
Yeah. Outstanding salty shakedown as always, Shannon. And I do want to go back to Zion Williamson again for a moment because, you talk about there they are in New Orleans kind of poking fun at him. Two things, three. He's been injury prone, as you document. There is word that he just doesn't have a great work ethic. And then the third part is that he's kind of eating himself out of the league. He should hire a nutritionist. He doesn't eat well. I heard somebody on national radio just this morning comparing Zion Williamson, who was drafted number 1 overall, to Greg Oden, who was drafted number 1 overall by the Portland Trailblazers in 2007. In each of those drafts, Shannon, when Greg Oden was taken number 1, the number 2 pick was a guy named Kevin Durant. And Kevin Durant turned out to be pretty good. The guy who was drafted number 2 after Zion Williamson in that draft was Ja Morant, who we talked about earlier today, who scored a career and franchise record 52 points last night against the Spurs. Zion may be the new Greg Oden, and Ja Morant may be the new Kevin Durant. A very, very interesting comparison. When I heard that this morning, getting ready for work, I thought, all right, that's a pretty good comparison. And Zion seems to be on a trajectory to making that prophecy come true, which is sad because I like him and I want to see him successful.
It goes to show you why people like me, and I know Coach A feels this way too, about the draft and all of the stars. You can be number 1, you can have 5, 4 stars, whatever. But once you get to that next level, show me, don't tell me.
Yeah. And what was Kawhi Leonard, like a number 13 overall, on draft day? The Spurs make that trade. They send George Hill to the Pacers, and now most people, at least until recently, now he's, talk about being injury prone. Kawhi's been out of the lineup a lot, all this year, a lot last year, and it was injury issues that caused the dispute in San Antonio, reportedly, 2017. But, at his peak, Kawhi was considered a top 5 NBA player and is on that 75th all 75 team. So huge point. And you do preach that whenever it comes to the NFL draft and college recruiting. And we're seeing that play out once again in the NBA. Coming up, speaking of the NBA, KARL SCHOENING, who is going to join us, can talk all things NBA. He can talk all things college hoops and international hoops. He's a basketball savant, also a broadcaster for the Austin Spurs. But yesterday, KARL SCHOENING found himself in the broadcast booth as UTSA baseball wins arguably the biggest win of its program. They did knock off number 1 Baylor back in 2012, but knocking off number 2 Stanford at UTSA. All right, maybe top 2, top 3. Coming up, KARL SCHOENING joining us next. Lots to catch up with KARL on, and we'll see if I'm out of line on dogging Philly fans. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Chris Duel Show. James Rippey says Zion Williamson's biggest problem is he is surrounded by yes men and eats way too much food, junk food, and drinks too many sugary drinks. That is, James, that is one of the problems. If you're not disciplined, like a Michael Jordan was, and, these great athletes, and Tom Brady, so disciplined about what he puts into his body, when you come out of in the NBA in particular, you come out of college, you're a one and done. So you've essentially just kind of come out of high school and you're all of a sudden a multimillionaire. And in the case of Zion Williamson, a superstar before he set foot on an NBA court. And yes, that comes with yes men and hangers on and people who want to be in your circle and will never give you constructive criticism for fear that you might eject them from the inner circle. Yeah. And you just kind of hope for Zion Williamson's sake that, he makes changes before it's too late. Oh, I need a KARL SCHOENING graphic here for our screen. Let me see if I can make that happen. Let's see here. All right. Let's see. Where is that? Good morning, Axel J. Miller. 40 degrees in Denver. We had 36 this morning in San Antonio. There is our Karl Schoening photo. Joining us here in just a moment. Axel, I've got to look up where they might land as far as draft picks. Of course, they would, if they don't get in, they go to the lottery, and they will have a total of 3 draft picks. So I'll be back in a sec. Karl Schoening going to join us. He had the great call yesterday as UTSA beat number 2 Stanford Stanford in baseball. Big win. Jeremy is calling Karl Schoening. Got him on the line. Thank you, sir. And you got the audio coming, right? Beautiful. Here we go. I kind of like that little jailhouse rock.
It's the Chris Duel Show.
You know the day destroys the night. Night.
Gonna mute for a moment for our evil overlords.
Come through to the other side. We're going through to the
O'Rourke's 3-1. Swung on, sent into the deep center field. This one will be off of the wall. It'll score Sir Dashing, and UTSA upsets number 2 Stanford. The bat of Leighton Berry brings in the run of Shane Serdashny. UTSA wins their 5th in a row, and there's a dog pile.
What a great call. What a great for UTSA baseball yesterday. A walk-off 10th inning RBI enabling UTSA to defeat number 2 in the country, Stanford. That was KARL Schoening on the call. KARL, for so long, has been a part of this show as our go-to basketball savant on all things basketball. But as you heard right there, as a broadcaster, he's got some pretty darn good baseball chops as well. KARL Schoening, tremendous call yesterday. How are you doing this morning?
Hey, great. That might be no, I don't think that is a might be. That is the biggest upset I've ever called. So really excited that I was able to broadcast that game on CUSA.TV for Conference USA and UTSA. And, going into a game where you're going up against a team like Stanford, who was ranked 4th over the weekend, but when they defeated Arkansas on Sunday, they got the number 2 spot from Arkansas. So, UTSA wasn't scared of the moment, and they came away with the win, and I was just happy I could be on the call for that one.
I was telling Shannon, KARL, listening to your call of the game winner right there, you did something that Vin Scully was known for doing, one of the best baseball broadcasters ever. Some people will say the best. That was after the big RBI. You made the call, but then you backed off and let us hear the noise in the stadium, the crowd noise. There are so many play-by-play broadcasters that feel they have to fill every moment with their voice. You gave us several seconds, as Vin Scully was known for, of just the ambiance of the crowd cheering in the moment. I just loved it. I just thought, and as Shannon said earlier, she's crossed your path a number of times as well, but to hear your call, I just thought it was a tremendous call. I thought you did a great job.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Out there at Roadrunner Field, as the broadcaster, I'm actually in the stands with the fans. So I was kind of soaking it up too a bit because it was a great atmosphere, even though it was a 1:00 first pitch because Stanford had to get back to the West Coast on a flight that was leaving San Antonio later that night. The crowd was great. They reported, I think, somewhere just under 500 people, but it was as full as I've ever seen Roadrunner Field. And they all were really into the fact that it was a tight game and it was a great crowd. And then as soon as that hit was sent to deep, it was pretty much assured that the win was going to either be a sacrifice fly, ended up being a single, and everyone just went crazy as the upset was secured. And I just had to kind of let the fans, who were so great all game, get their moment as well, as that was sort of just a roar of applause for such a great game for UTSA.
Well, KARL, UTSA, even before this game, was off to a hot start. They're now 7-1 on the season. You can only play on who's in front of you on the schedule. I know that TCU game was postponed due to weather. Do you know if we're going to get to make that one up so they get another shot at another really high opponent team? And how do you see the rest of the season faring for the Roadrunners?
Yeah, that is a good point. When TCU was ranked 14 at the time, and they ended up postponing that game. I believe they're going to want to check it out, but it's one of those things where, baseball, they got to figure that out down the road, and they just want to get through their opening weekends and tournaments. So, yeah, Seattle came into town and Seattle University had 4 games in 3 days. So they just decided to put that one off. But, Seattle, a team out of the WAC. WAC's not a bad baseball conference. Seattle's not necessarily a great team, but that was sort of the momentum to get them confidence to go up against a Stanford. Hey, we're on a 4-game winning streak. Let's just see what happens. And it's sort of a weird midweek game where Stanford wanted to try out some young arms. Both teams sent out a lot of pitchers. Stanford had 7 pitchers play for them and pitch for them. And on the UTSA side, UTSA had 7 and Stanford had 6 different pitchers. So just a lot of pitching changes and a lot of good opportunities for both teams to try out some guys that aren't usually part of their normal rotation, either in the batting lineup or on the mound. So, not necessarily the most indicative of what would happen should it be maybe a regional or a super regional where UTSA would go up against Stanford and, everybody would be going at it, but the typical starters. But obviously, when you do have a team like Stanford, you kind of still expect them to come away with a win. And UTSA wasn't scared, and they're one of the best teams in terms of offense in the country. So they showed that they could hang with a big team like that.
He is KARL Schoening. He had the call as UTSA in the 10th inning with that 6-5 walk-off winner over number 2 Stanford. And again, to underscore, Stanford at number 2, it is reported that was the highest ranking of any UTSA opponent in any sport for a team that came onto the UTSA campus for an athletic event. Now, back in 2012, UTSA baseball knocked off number 1 Baylor, but that was at Waco. So just a huge win for the program. And KARL, UTSA has made so much noise lately with their football program under Jeff Traylor. The huge season last year, they went so deep into the season undefeated before they suffered their first loss. Is it kind of what's going on at that UTSA campus? Is it kind of a situation of, a high tide is raising all ships? Has UTSA baseball, Shannon mentions their great start here and you're talking about it. Have they been known as a really, really good baseball program, or is this something that's kind of emerging right now as they seem to be elevating that athletic department across the board at UTSA?
Well, I wouldn't say that this is typical. A 7-1 start is obviously a great start to the season. And, obviously there's also the whole recovering from the 2020 season where they were only able to play 17 games. That was a good start where they were 6-1 at home and, they weren't really a good road team. And then the season ended, so you couldn't really figure out whether they were good or just good at home, which some teams are only good at home. And then last year, they were hovering around 500. So, this year they're hoping to really put things together. Last year, they were one of the top teams in batting in the country, but their ERA as a pitching staff wasn't there. This year, they brought in a lot of transfers all over the country, JUCO, and get in the pitching mound and get a good relief and bullpen rotation. And I do think that maybe their pitching has improved just enough and their hitting is right where it was around last year that this could be a really good year for UTSA. In terms of when it comes to conference play, we'll have to see what happens. But I would say at the moment, you have to give UTSA the best team in Conference USA the way they've started off this season. And, hopefully that will kind of snowball effect into, next year's team being better and so on and so forth. You just kind of want to keep on building, especially heading into that American Athletic Conference.
Talking to KARL Schoening, and he's a basketball savant. So, KARL, I've got to get into the NBA with you. First things first, the Lakers and Mr. LeBron James. It's not looking great, as even with all of those high-power names on that team, they are suffering, and most of the blame has been on head coach Frank Vogel. Chris and I were talking yesterday about, kind of almost expecting him to be fired sometime this week. It has yet to happen. I don't know what it's going to take at this point, but in your mind, how do you see the Lakers moving into this offseason and going forward, and will Frank Vogel be there?
Excuse me. Frank Vogel, he's in a tough situation because I don't think that roster is particularly well constructed. You had an opportunity to maybe bring in a shooter like Buddy Hield, but you went with the superstar and Russell Westbrook. And Westbrook, without the ball in his hands, isn't necessarily an effective player. So you sort of need to cater to Westbrook if you're going to have him on your team to be the engine that makes the team go. But that's sort of LeBron James's job. So now you have two guys that are very ball-dominant superstars that aren't necessarily best with the ball not in their hands. And they're both past their prime defensively. So you're putting a lot of weight on the other guys to be good defensively. And Anthony Davis has been in and out of the lineup with various injuries. The Lakers didn't re-sign Alex Caruso. There were, just kind of questionable decisions made all around the circumstances that kind of lead us to this point. And I don't think Frank Vogel deserves the blame, but coaches usually get the blame. And in this particular case, I think it wouldn't be the smartest idea to fire Frank Vogel. You just kind of got to roll with what you got at this point. And I know the Lakers are sitting at that 9 seed, and they're going to have to win the play-in tournament to make the playoffs. And then when they're in the playoffs, are they going to beat the Suns or the Warriors in a 7-game series? Probably not. So you come to a situation where, do you trade LeBron James or Anthony Davis and see what you can maybe get for Russell Westbrook and just start the rebuilding process? Because you went all in on this team if you're the Lakers. Jeannie Buss gave up, I think, 4 first-round picks and all of the rebuilding they did before LeBron came, towards the end of that Kobe Bryant era where they were pretty much intentionally tanking, and to make sure that they got to keep those picks that were actually owned by Philadelphia that turned into Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram. And then they traded all those guys away to get Anthony Davis, and it worked out for 1 championship. And it might be time for the Lakers to kind of cut their losses and explore trade markets. I know that it's not really the best idea to trade a player like LeBron James, but and you might not be able to ever, well, it's LA, you're going to be able to draw free agents down the line. But yeah, it's looking like the best case scenario for the Lakers is to say, hey, we got our 1 championship in 2020. LeBron, thank you for everything. You're going to go down as an interesting career as a Laker, maybe one of the all-time greats for the Lakers, even though you were here for 4 seasons at the end of your career. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Lakers blow it up. They fire Vogel. They see what they can get for maybe a LeBron James and a Russell Westbrook, and maybe build around Anthony Davis. But I wouldn't even be surprised if Anthony Davis is out there. But, the Lakers, they like their star power, and they also do feel a little bit of pressure with the Clippers having Paul George and Kawhi Leonard going to be fully healthy next year, you would assume. So they still want to be the number 1 team in LA, but they're not even the number 1 team in LA right now with LeBron and AD and Russell Westbrook. The Clippers are in that 8th spot. So you don't know what's going on in La La Land, but it is the best drama on TV. So I'm going to enjoy watching their off season. And it is a bit of a bummer to see LeBron James's career sort of, I guess, fade into this part where if we didn't have the play-in tournament, he might miss the playoffs. And with a roster like that, you do kind of look at the coach. But then if you really look at the grand scheme of things, Frank Vogel wasn't actually put in the best position to win because they were trying to save money on luxury tax by not re-signing Alex Caruso. They could have done that. And a guy like that really could be a big difference to this team from them being the 9 seed to maybe being the 5 or the 6. So, poor LeBron and the Lakers, but I don't think that they're going to make any drastic changes until the offseason. And then it's tough to make drastic changes when you're talking about that kind of star power. You might just go double down on it and give away another first-round pick and try and improve what you can on Russell Westbrook.
He is KARL Schoening, talking hoops with him right now. We started off talking UTSA and college baseball, and I just heard you say the best drama on TV is the Lakers, which is interesting because there is a Lakers TV drama coming to HBO and HBO Max on March 6th. It's called Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty. It was originally a book by Jeff Pearlman, who used to write for Sports Illustrated. I've had Jeff on the show a couple of times. We'll probably bring him back with this Lakers drama coming up on HBO later this week. KARL, you mentioned the Lakers probably going to be in the play-in tournament. the San Antonio Spurs, they've said recently, Devin Vassell, talking to the media about a week or two ago, he said, they're all in. They want to get into the postseason, get into that tournament. They're about a game and a half back of the Pelicans, who are in the 10 slot the last time I checked. And Carl, as a broadcaster for the Austin Spurs, you've got intimate knowledge of a lot of these young players, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Trey Jones, this year, Josh Primo, just because the way things have worked out, Josh Primo spent a lot of time with the San Antonio Spurs. But the Spurs 4-4 on this rodeo road trip. You count their last game at the AT&T Center, they're 5-4, 5 out of their last 9. It kind of feels to me, Carl, like this youth movement is beginning to pay dividends for the San Antonio Spurs. Based on what you've seen in Austin with these players who are now making an impact in San Antonio, what are your thoughts on the San Antonio Spurs right now?
It's a moment to preach patience, I guess, because you look at the team and they're good, but it's not necessarily translating to wins. And that's part of being a young team, is learning how to win. And while you might hear some people say the Spurs should aim to tank, I understand that. But obviously, Pop already addressed that and said you can't just go out there and tell these guys, hey, play hard but lose. It's obviously a better situation to develop a winning culture is what I'm getting at. And while the Spurs might not necessarily be in the playoffs when everything's said and done, or even the play-in tournament, the Spurs are trying to win, and they're close on these games. John Morant goes off for 52 last night, but they were hanging tight despite that a good chunk of the ball game, and had an opportunity to kind of close out until Morant went a little crazy and made a run, and the Spurs were going to lose another game. But the overall feel of this team is just kind of be patient if you're a Spurs fan. I think that they've done a good job to put themselves in position to have a really good offseason with a lot of cap space, 3 first-round picks. The team as a whole is getting a lot of chemistry between them. So, while this might not be the season that a lot of fans kind of wanted it to be with the youth movement, the Spurs did basically say we're going all in on the youth, and particularly the 26 and younger crowd, Jakob Poeltl being the oldest main rotation player in that group. And, you're going to have DeJounte leading the way for a while. He's 25 years old. And I think really the thing will be if the Spurs can find a second star player, whether that emerges from a developing maybe Devin Vassell or Keldon Johnson or even Josh Primo sometime in the next few years, or if they can use this cap space to sign a free agent, or the other good thing about cap space is you can make trades. So just throwing it out there, and it's not going to happen, Chris, but a guy can dream. The Spurs could theoretically trade their first-round picks and only send somebody like a Josh Richardson to the Lakers for a LeBron James. What? Because even though those salaries don't match up, the Spurs have all that cap space to absorb the additional salaries. And, somebody, I know that's kind of a far-fetched dream to put out there, but the Spurs have put themselves in a position to maybe go after a star in a trade with all of the first-round picks. You see what Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis went for when they were leaving New Orleans. It was 4 first-round picks for those guys. And in previous years, the Spurs might not have been able to really pull that off. However, if they look at it now, they got that 2025 Bulls pick. They got the Celtics pick in the Derek White trade. They, I'm blanking. They got the Toronto Raptors pick in the Thaddeus Young trade, and they obviously still have their own. So, that'll probably be a top 10 pick. And we're talking about the other 2 picks being late teens, early 20s, depending on where the Celtics and Raptors end up. So now you have 3 first-round picks. You have an additional one from the 2025 Bulls pick. You have your own for the next few years. That's some, poker chips to play with when you're trying to go in on maybe, in this era, a player that wants to request a trade, or it's not working out with, say, a Karl Anthony Towns because the Timberwolves are, sitting at 7th seed. They're having one of their better seasons with Towns, but at the same time, is it enticing to maybe say, hey, let's build around Anthony Edwards because the Spurs are offering us 4 first-round picks for Karl Anthony Towns, and then you get a forward to pair along with DeJounte Murray, and you also allow somebody like Keldon Johnson to maybe go to his more natural 3. Devin Vassell can play the 2. You'll have Lonnie and Primo coming off the bench. And as you hope that they get older, they develop into better players. This Spurs team, it's a development year, and maybe they make the play-in tournament, and that would be good for them, or maybe they end with a bottom 7 record, and they can kind of parlay those picks to jump up into the draft.
KARL Schoening with us, and KARL, I love that you at least brought up the LeBron James scenario. I was telling Shannon last week when LeBron made his comments, he wants to play with his son Bronny to close out his career. I have a dream of Bronny and LeBron in silver and black. We know that Pop likes LeBron and LeBron likes Pop, and I don't think it's impossible. KARL, again, I was just so thrilled to hear your call yesterday. UTSA's big win over number 2 Stanford in baseball. We played it earlier in the show in the 6 o'clock hour. We played it when you joined us here at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. It was radio gold, man. We loved it. And I know it was TV, so it was television and radio gold. But great stuff. And KARL, as we move into March Madness, man, we just love your basketball knowledge and your basketball perspective. We'd love to grab you a lot more as conference tournaments, the NCAA tournament, and NBA playoffs approach. Thanks so much for taking the time. Great stuff, sir. We sure do appreciate it.
Absolutely. Chris, Salty, thank y'all for having me on. Jeremy, I appreciate you doing what you do too. Thank y'all for having me on. And can't wait to talk to y'all again when we get to the madness that comes up this month.
Absolutely. We certainly will. KARL's a great follow on Twitter, by the way, at KS Media 13, at KS Media 13 on Twitter. Coming up, we will talk more NBA and college hoops, but we got to talk some National Football League as God intended on this Tuesday, March 1st. So everything else that's popping in the world of sports, and if anything breaks in the Major League Baseball negotiations, or if Frank Vogel gets fired by the Lakers, we'll jump all over that as well. We're with you till 9. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. Jeremy Kolok makes the show go. You're listening to the Chris Duel Show. Thank you, Louisa. Michael Harwell, such a Spurs fan, says 24 and 38. Yay. Glad you're finally coming around, Michael, and appreciating what the Spurs are doing here with this youth movement. 5 of their last 9. 5-4 over their last 9. Let's see. Trying to take down my KARL Schoening photo. I was going to ask him, but I ran out of time. I took a shot at Philadelphia fans earlier, and that irked a Philly fan named David on our live video feed. I was going to ask him if I was out of line and get a comment from him, but we ran out of time on that segment, which happens. Yeah, Axel was asking, there are 3 first-round picks for the Spurs. And it's going to be very interesting, as KARL talked about, to see what the Spurs do with those 3 first, because they've got such great youth, and you've got an all-star now with DeJounte Murray. Do you package those picks and go get a veteran? Or do you continue the youth movement? Frank Ramirez, good morning. Michael says, I'm still here waiting for it to turn around. It has. We're 5-4. 4-4 on the rodeo road trip. We almost went 5-3. It has turned around. They're going to beat Sacramento tomorrow, Thursday, in 2 days. So they will have won 6 of their last 10. They're on a roll. Woo! In Pop we trust. All right. Yeah, I don't think, James, you mentioned Karl Anthony Towns, and while that would be a big one, a big reach, I don't think anything is out of the realm of possibility. Let's see here. Let's see. Here we go. Woo! Woo! What a day. The 1st of March. It's a new month. It's a new day. It's a Taco Tuesday. It's election day. Major League Baseball extending its deadline, its self-imposed deadline. They're going to meet the players and the owners after going until 2 o'clock in the morning Eastern time last night. They are set to meet again this morning at 10 a.m. Central time. The latest deadline is now 4 p.m. today Central time. And we spoke with Scott Mandziara, our baseball dude, about that in the 7 o'clock hour. And Scott's pretty confident that something's going to happen soon. In fact, he used some Red McCombs language and said the deal will get done. So that's a good thing. Shannon, Salty, Sweeney, there's a lot of things that we haven't gotten to yet, and we will get to them right now in short order. We've talked about the fact, and it's going to be kind of a big deal, that not only in the conference tournaments or tournament for the ACC, but for the NCAA tournament, Duke and Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, his last season. But for fans of Duke, their final regular season game is this weekend against North Carolina. That's getting a lot of attention, and I think rightfully so. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, and of course that matchup between those two schools and historic programs are always hot tickets to get. But as it is Coach K's final farewell season and his final game that he'll be coaching at Cameron Indoor Stadium, ticket prices are going for a lot, thousands of dollars. It looks like on StubHub, the cheapest one you're going to find is $3,000 for a nosebleed seat. And I know it's Cameron Indoor, so there's not many nosebleed seats available or seats that are really considered nosebleeds. But you can look to pay upwards of $7,000 if you're wanting something a little closer to the floor. I find it interesting, because he is a coach and not a player, and I guess it's a historic moment, but it's not been their best season overall. I don't think I'd ever pay that much to say I want to see this coach's final game. I don't know anyone who goes to a basketball game and watches the coach on the sideline so intently that they're like, yes, I'm getting my money's worth here for paying to see this coach. But I guess it is, especially if you're a Duke basketball hardcore fan, that this is, you don't know what's going to happen after this. You don't know if you'll have that run that you've had for so long with Coach K. He's also obviously was a big part of Team USA basketball. So I can kind of understand it, but at the same time, it is a coach and not a player who's, playing it or coaching in his final game.
Well, and, you bring up, would someone pay that kind of money to be in the building for a coach's last game, Shannon? And as I hear you say that, I think about Coach Greg Popovich. I mean, sooner or later, and knowing Pop, unlike the Coach K situation at Duke, and it is interesting, as you mentioned, they have both the last two, and now it's Steve Kerr, the last two Olympic Team USA Olympic coaches, Pop, and before that, Coach K. But it's, I think a lot of us revere coaches of our teams. For me, two of my favorite coaches ever have been Greg Popovich and Tom Landry. And, in retrospect, if I could have been in Texas Stadium for Tom Landry's last game on the sideline as a Cowboys head coach, wow, that I would have loved that. And for Greg Popovich, if I could be there for his final game ever on the sideline as head coach of the Spurs. But as you point out, though, $3,000 for a nosebleed seat, I'd have to really think of that. I mean, obviously, it's a feel-good thing as a fan to be in the building for that kind of history for somebody who means so much to you as a fan. But $3,000 to be way the heck. And the older I get, Shannon, I realize I like watching sporting events at home because I get a better angle on TV unless I had a really good seat. The beer is a lot cheaper at my house, and there's no line in my restroom. I don't have to wait. And if I really have to take a timeout, I can hit pause on my DVR, take a phone call, get a beer, do whatever I have to do, and then come back and hit play. So, I kind of see it both ways.
Yeah. And, again, Cameron Indoor, it's not very large, 9,000 seats, just over in that arena, which is about half as many seats as you'll find in an average NBA arena. So hopefully for the final game of Coach Pop, if we know that it's coming, I don't think the supply and demand will be as much maybe for that one. And so hopefully tickets not nearly as high. I'm sure they'll be pretty pricey, but they're comparing this event as the equivalent of a major band or artist playing a show for just 200 people. That's how they're comparing the supply and demand here for seats available at Cameron Indoor for this final game and those wanting to get a ticket in.
Wow, that is a big deal. Now, speaking of college athletics and coaches, we've been talking about this, Shannon, the fact that Art Briles, after his deplorable tenure at Baylor, where as the head coach of that football team, a number of his football players did horrible things, and let's just say it, sexual assault, among other things. So he goes to Grambling University, as you documented. Grambling did not make a big announcement, kind of tried to fly under the radar. He became offensive coordinator. We talked about it, I believe, with Coach A, how Doug Williams, maybe the most visible graduate of the Grambling State football team, went on to lead Washington to a Super Bowl championship at quarterback later. Doug Williams said, "Not cool. I'm not down with this. This is not good." And you and I wondered, would this reach a critical mass to where Art Briles would have to not be an offensive coordinator at Grambling State? We now know the answer to that situation.
Yeah, Art Briles, the story is that he is the one who decided to step away. That Grambling State did not force him to, but Art Briles put out a statement saying, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of your coaching staff at Grambling State University. Unfortunately, I feel that my continued presence will be a distraction to you and your team, which is the last thing that I want. I have the utmost respect for the university and your players. Continued presence. You were there. You were part of that staff for a total of 4 days. So I don't know what presence you really had other than that your name was attached to the school itself. I do find it interesting that it's played at the angle of him walking away and not the school saying, we're not digging this press. Not all press is good press, because to me, it feels like at this point, Art just wants to coach. And he'll take any job that'll have him, and but comes in with the understanding that they could easily let me go in a few days if the pushback is big enough for the school to start to get uncomfortable.
See, I think, and we talked about this in another situation recently, Shannon, I think that was a courtesy by Grambling State. I think Hugh Jackson, the head coach at Grambling, and probably the university, when Doug Williams, your most notable football alum ever, says this can't be, I believe the dominoes began to fall probably behind the scenes. And again, I think as a courtesy, it's like, Art Briles, you got to go. But if you want to say that you're the one choosing, then, we'll let that ride. I really do believe that was the case. I think they found out, like the Canadian Football League team that tried to hire Art Briles a couple years ago as an assistant coach. The fan base was up in arms when they heard about that. I just think this is going to happen wherever Art Briles goes. And sorry, Art, you kind of brought this on yourself. You were a bad dude and not a very good caretaker of your responsibilities as head coach at Baylor, and you kind of reap what you sow here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at the outcome at all. I'm curious if going to the NFL, given kind of, there's plenty of people that are still coaching in the NFL who don't have the best backgrounds. If maybe because they are considered grown men and men of their own minds, he's not necessarily molding them in the way that you do a college football player, if he'd have a little more luck in getting a job to stick.
Yeah, and maybe, and as an assistant or a coordinator, I don't necessarily think the fan base would freak out as much, although, as we mentioned, it did happen in the Canadian Football League. So it's a great question, and maybe we'll get an answer to that if an NFL team takes a shot with Art Briles. You've also been tracking, Shannon, what's going on with FIFA and, the 2022 World Cup and what's going to happen with Russia. We talked about it yesterday, and apparently there's new developments there as well.
Yeah, so what we discussed yesterday was that FIFA was going to allow the Russian team to continue competing to try and get into the field at the World Cup. Almost kind of similar of how the Russian athletes have been competing at the Olympics. They're not under the flag of Russia. They're not under the name of Russia, but they are still Russian athletes. So at these FIFA events, they were going to have home games on neutral sites. They weren't going to be able to have fans in attendance. They weren't going to have the national anthem, and they weren't going to use the name Russia, but they were going to be able to compete as a team. And FIFA, I don't know if it's from flack from the public or what, but they have kind of changed course a little bit here and have just completely decided that Russia will not be a part of the 2022 World Cup.
And Shannon, as much as I feel for those athletes in Russia, and again, our beef is not against the Russian people in this war against Ukraine, but it's against Vladimir Putin and the Russian government. But I think you almost, in the same way that economically so many banks across the European Union and around the world are freezing assets, I think you kind of need to do this to make those athletes up in arms about their government,
Yep.
to make the families of those athletes and the fans of those athletes to go, what's going on here? Putin is telling the Russian people a certain bill of goods about how Ukraine is a threat to Russia, which is bogus. I sadly, and it's awful that it's come to this, but I'm with FIFA on this. I think you need to take a stand, and hopefully Russia backs down and withdraws from Ukraine, and then FIFA can say, you know what, you're behaving better. Let's let your athletes come play in the World Cup. And I think if you make a decision like this, you put that out there. You go, you know what, because you're doing this, we're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you decide to act like a responsible global citizen and not go kill people in Ukraine for no damn reason, then we'll revisit this. And maybe that's the way to do it.
Yeah, and knowing kind of how corrupt FIFA as a governing body can be, you almost wonder if they realized less about it being kind of the right thing to say, all right, you guys can't compete this year, but realizing that had Russia been in the tournament come the World Cup this summer, the conversation would, again, bad press for FIFA, and the conversation would almost solely be on Russia's existence in the tournament versus just kind of, shutting the door on it now and getting ahead of it. So I think overall it's the right move.
And finally, Shannon, our poll question today has to do with Major League Baseball. As we mentioned, they negotiated late into the night last night. They extended the self-imposed deadline to 4:00 Central this afternoon. They'll get together in just over an hour, 10 o'clock Central, owners and the Players Association. What have we learned from the poll question?
Yeah, a lot of folks actually now coming in saying I think the full season will be canceled for the MLB. 42% saying mini games canceled, 38% a resolution this month, and just 9% now saying something will be resolved today.
You can go and vote at the poll question at AM 1300 The Zone, at Ticket 760 on Twitter. Shannon, fully rested on this Tuesday. Outstanding as always. We'll do it again in 21 hours.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Enjoy your Fat Tuesday.
Thank you. Jeremy Kolok with us the rest of the week.
Yes,
Great
sir.
job.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoying it. Our thanks as well to KARL SCHOENING, talking about his great call for UTSA baseball and basketball as well. And SCOTT MANDZIARA talking baseball with us. Whatever is popping and breaking in the sports world in the next 21 hours, we will be all over it 6 to 9 tomorrow. Have yourself a great Fat Tuesday. Bye-bye, everybody.